originally I'm from Warsaw, Poland, but I've spent most of my life moving around, like through Shanghai, Taipei, Warsaw, Kielce, Connecticut, and now most recently in Georgia. And throughout my moves, I've had the awesome opportunity to try out lots of different sports. Currently, I still play tennis and swim. And while I'm by no means particularly gifted in any of the sports I do think there's a sense of community, joy, development that sports bring out in us that you just can't really find anywhere else. And I know I'm not alone in this passion, which is why I'm super excited and honored to be moderating the sports fireside chat. Sports serve as such a tremendous opportunity for empowerment and growth for girls everywhere, and yet there can be a lack of motivating figureheads and abundance of obstacles. Despite strides that have been made in representation, things are by no means equal. And sports have institutionalized gender inequality, and it feels like there's this societal echo of masculine superiority and dominance in the field, which is really discouraging for young women when it feels like the whole world is kind of questioning what you're doing and why you're doing it. And because sports are so traditionally male dominated, empowering women to enter sports is extremely critical to advancing gender equality. Girl leaders need to use organizing and advocacy skills to reduce the gender gap in sports, which is why I'm super pumped to talk with Lindsay Mclaren, a leader with game-changing experience founding the Neighborhood Skate Club and a 10+ year sports career journey in sports marketing. Lindsay, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Lindsay. I am here in London, England. It's about 9:20 in the evening here, which is why it looks really dark. But as Alex said, I founded Neighborhood Skate Club, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And I work in sports marketing, specifically in action sports. So everything from snowboarding and skateboarding to some other winter sports and into the kind of outdoors world as well. So yeah, thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure, and so I'm so excited to see all of your faces and to be a part of this. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your introduction. I'm already super excited, but I can't wait to learn a lot more about you. So with that being said, can you please share some insight into your sports career journey? Did you grow up playing sports? How did you find your passion for sports marketing? And what exactly do you do in your day-to-day life for your job?
Sure. So yeah, I did grow up playing some sports. Both my parents are or were professional athletes. My dad in basketball and my mum in badminton and squash. And my dad went on to be a basketball coach. So growing up, sports was always big in our household, but I was definitely more into the arts. And it wasn't until I was a teenager and I found snowboarding and then into college and university when I started skateboarding that I found sports that really excited me as far as a participation level and sports which I felt really resonated and excited me really, despite having grown up in such a sporting household. As much as I loved going to games, I was never really at the forefront of playing. So yeah, as I got older, actually, it's when sports really became such a big part of my life, which came with such a shock factor for so many people because it was action sports or extreme sports. So we all know the stereotypes and you know, people being so worried that I might hurt myself that I had to have a lot of those conversations going through the early days. But yeah, what's been really exciting is over the past 10 years or so, I've been able to merge my degree and my studies in marketing with my passion and my, you know, love for skateboarding and action sports to form a career in brand marketing and PR across that industry. So as far as my day-to-day goes, it's very varied, especially since I started adding Neighborhood Skate Club into the mix as well. But from a work point of view, my job is a bit of a mix of working with ambassadors for our brands, working with our professional skate team to create content and skate films and get photos and different things, whether that's for use on blogs, social media, etc. I work with content creators, and then I also help support all of our skateboarding and outdoor retailers up and down the UK. And then, of course, keeping in constant dialogue with our global teams in the US. So these late night Zoom calls are not too too much of a stranger for me. I'm used to staying up late and chatting on Zoom to everyone. So yeah, that's a little bit of what I do. I basically help brands tell stories that resonate with you guys, with consumers, with people, with real life people.
That's so awesome. And I feel like I've never really gotten to hear about that before, which I think is like brings up the important point that there's so many awesome hidden opportunities that exist in sports that we just don't get to hear about. And one of these awesome opportunities is obviously Neighborhood Skate Club. So could you talk a little bit more about what exactly Neighborhood Skate Club is and what inspired you to start that kind of a space for girls to explore their interests?
Of course, I would love to. So Neighborhood Skate Club is basically a community or a collective, especially for women, to bring women together to learn how to skate or to excel in skateboarding, but also really helping to empower them through the use of voice, and then how that connects to movement as well. So I think when teaching skateboarding, there's always been it's as we can all, I'm sure, resonate with, skateboarding feels very male dominated, and although there are more women and young girls riding skateboards now than any time else in my career, like I'm sure a lot of you guys saw the Olympics recently with Sky Brown, who was super inspiring. So as much now as it's amazing to see so many young girls, especially riding skateboards, but it's just continuing to create safe spaces for young girls and women to get involved in a sport that never felt like it was made for them. As far as the media goes, we only really see men and boys doing it, although that's changing now with girls like Sky coming on board. But especially when I was starting, it was very rare to see women not only doing it, but celebrated doing it. And all the stereotypes that come with that. So Neighborhood is really just trying to bring women together, create a safe space. We do one-to-one lessons and group events, and together we've built this really strong community, which I think people just feel so happy to be a part of, because they're making friends from a world that they didn't know was for them, and being able to find friendship through something that is a shared passion, and learning together, falling together, picking yourself back up together, is something which I think has resonated with a lot of these young girls and women.
Wow, I love that so much. And I definitely see the importance of it reflected in so many different elements. Like, especially my younger sister, she absolutely loves skating, but she does get discouraged pretty often when there's like periods where there's just like it's not celebrated enough. Like, the Olympics is like a very good peak moment for her, or especially when someone at school relates to it. But I feel like that's like a very general and prominent idea with girls in sports is it's super easy to get discouraged. So do you have any advice for girls who want to try a new sport but are unsure of where to start? And how did you overcome the initial fears that you had when you were trying to skateboard for the first time?
Well, firstly, let me just tell you all, I was no good for a long time. I was really, really, really rubbish at skateboarding for a long time before I figured out how to do it. And I didn't have a teacher or a coach or anything like that. I basically taught myself. I was going to university in Miami, actually. And the reason I started skating was because for the first time growing up in the countryside in Scotland, which is where I'm from, I never saw any girls doing it. And when I moved to Miami, I saw so many other girls skating around. I thought, oh, wow, this is something I could do too. So I started to teach myself. But it was scary because, like I said earlier, there were a lot of people telling me, be careful, or you're going to hurt yourself, or why are you doing this? Are you just doing it to try and impress boys? You just want a skater boyfriend? Blah, 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 right? So the first thing is to recognize that you may experience that. It doesn't have to be if it's skateboarding, it could be so many other sports. There will always be somebody who is, maybe has something else to say, or they want you to focus on your academics or various different things. But if it feels good for you, then do it. And a lesson that I learned from skateboarding is when you fall, you pick yourself back up. And I think that is relevant not just to a sport like skateboarding, where you literally will be falling a lot. But some other advice I think for me is to try and separate your feelings from facts, right? So just because you're feeling something, just because you're feeling maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome or just nervous to be you know, on the court for the first time, or you know, whatever sport it is, I think it's to kind of remind yourself that you're capable and you have just as much right to do these things as anybody else. Self-doubt is a totally normal response. But I would encourage anyone who's experiencing self-doubt to try and shift your internal dialogue. Instead of thinking that you don't belong there, think, I can learn a lot here. So if you're feeling intimidated by other people who are around you, say you're at the skate park, or say you're on a tennis court or a basketball court, or whatever it is, instead of thinking, oh God, these people are so intimidated, I'm so scared of them, think, oh wow, they're inspiring, let me see what I can learn from them. You know, so shift your internal dialogue so you're not putting yourself down. I think that those are a couple of steps to just get you going, but the main thing is just to show up and own your space and enjoy the process.
I really resonate with that, especially the facts, not feelings. Like I feel like imposter syndrome is so hard to get over, but that, like, I see that super applicable to my life. So thank you for that advice. But like
Sure.
beyond getting involved in like entering, like trying, ripping off the band-aid and going into sports, how do you think that we can increase opportunities for girls and women in sports? And what do you think is the biggest barrier that drives like the gender gap?
So the first thing I would say is, if we start small, so look around you, celebrate yourself and celebrate each other. So when you do something or you step into the space, whatever it could be, whether it's sport related or not, to be honest, just make sure you give yourself a pat on the back and say, well done for just showing up and being there, because sometimes that's scary enough. But also celebrate all your friends that are doing cool stuff in sports and beyond as well. So just support each other and, you know, recognize that not everybody is patting us girls on the back sometimes, and it doesn't just come to women, it's other marginalized groups as well. So make sure that you're actively using your voice to do good. Don't just assume that somebody else will say big ups, well done. You know, make sure that you're that person too, and make sure you're that person that's also saying that to yourself. But beyond just supporting yourself and supporting each other, I think it's just really important to acknowledge that representation matters. So, for example, what got me into skating, like I said, was seeing other girls skating. When I was growing up in a tiny village in Scotland, I didn't see that. So the reason I didn't see it is because the media doesn't show us that. So it's also recognizing that just because you don't see as many women doing something, that doesn't mean you can't do it. And just because you don't see somebody that doesn't specifically look like you, that doesn't mean you can't do it. But at the same time, we have to recognize that the media and brands need to do better to showcase everyone, right? We have to not just pick the prettiest person, the person that they think, you know, might be the ideal brand marketing heroine or whatever that might look like. So I think we can all do more to just acknowledge that representation matters. It doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from, you know, everybody has a place. And brands and media, I think, really need to do a better job of showcasing that. And again, we're getting better, but that's not good enough. That doesn't mean we need to stop there. We have to just keep on going, right? I think we spoke a little bit about imposter syndrome. So I think that's something that can happen at a professional level, as well as, you know, when you're younger and just getting into a sport. And when you're stepping out there into your career as well, you may experience some of those same feelings. So it's checking back in on some of those things that we've already discussed. But workplace bias exists, and it's something that I've absolutely experienced in my career of working in such a male-dominated world. For many, many years, I was the only woman, you know, at the table, and I had to deal with being interrupted. I had to deal with, you know, having to work twice as hard to have my voice being heard. So my advice to any of you girls that are in a similar position or find yourself in a similar position in years to come, or tomorrow, whenever that might be, to just know that your voice matters and to just say, oh, excuse me, I wasn't finished. Or actually, I have an idea. I have something I'd like to say here. And when you step in and you go to that table, sit right up front and center. You don't need to hide away. This happens when I'm teaching skating. The girls, they want to learn in the tiniest little part of the path. They don't want to take up space. And I try and encourage them to come right out into the middle of the road and be there, have their arms out and weave right through everyone and anyone. They have just as much right to be there as anyone else. And I think that's really applicable to our journeys in sports, our journeys as we go through our careers, and even just stepping out on the street and being there, just doing whatever it may be that you need to do in your day. Do it with love for yourself and the other people around you. And yeah, my advice is just show up and own your space for as long as you can, whilst being respectful of others, especially other women and marginalized groups. The end. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Thank you so much. And thank you for being a part of that like representation that it's so hard to find, but it is such a big inspiration for girls everywhere. Like, thank you so much. Like just yourself, and then also with the neighborhood skate club, and then in this fireside chat itself. Like every part of it is so amazing. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, girls.
And I know that I learned a lot, but I was wondering if any of my friends in the audience have any questions, if they want to send those to the chat so that we could ask a question to Lindsay. Now'd be the time to do that. If anyone has any.
Do any of you girls skate or want to try skateboarding? Has anyone here ever tried it? Dun, dun, dun. Yes, here we go. So if anybody wants to try skating, I would look up and see if there's any skate parks in your local area. Go to your local skate shops and ask them if there's any girls skate groups. If you're in college or university or even in high school, you know, look and see if there's any groups that exist. I know there are a lot of you know, groups that exist that are like neighborhood up and down the country. So do a little research, use the powers of social media to find other groups, and recognize that when you're learning to skate, if you break it down and try and go in slow motion and don't be in such a rush to learn the gnarliest tricks, then you'll get there quicker. All right, it's not always about the most impressive tricks that feel the best. Sometimes it's just the act of cruising around or pushing that's good enough.
As for Neighborhood Skate Club, how could anyone in the Zoom call get involved with it if they wanted to?
So you can follow us on social media. It's just on Instagram at Neighborhood Skate Club, but it's neighborhood spelt the UK way, the British way. So so not the American way. It's NEIGHBOUR hood. Neighborhood Skate Club. I can try and I'll link it in this chat afterwards. There we go. Thank you. So you can follow us on social media. Not only do we share all of, you know, videos and photos of what we are up to, but there's actually a recent slideshow that I made on imposter syndrome. So I would encourage you guys to take a look at that slideshow because it's a lot of what we've just spoken about. And although that slideshow is applicable, or sorry, is focused on skateboarding, it's applicable to everything that we've been talking about. So yeah, follow along, drop me a message so I can know that it's you guys and follow back. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much.
If anyone ever comes to London, then you know who to hit up.
Exactly.
Come skate with us.
Thank you so much. And unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today. But I hope that everyone else enjoys the rest of the sports boot camp. And I hope everyone had as much fun as I did because it was so incredible to hear from such a powerful and well-spoken advocate. And personally, it's definitely like reinvigorated like my personal strength and my will to kind of work towards equity and equality in sports. So thank you so much to Lindsay. I hope everyone else enjoys the rest of the boot camp, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about Girl Up or the Girl Up TA tenure, or if you just want to talk. So thank you so much again, Lindsay, and I hope you guys have a great rest of the boot camp.